I think before we start, just want to make sure I'm audible. I sound good, right? So
Yep, I can
cool.
hear you loud and clear.
Nice. So let's, before we start talking about product management as today's topic, why don't you introduce yourself? And I will also mention a little bit how I met you after you introduce yourself. Yeah.
Sounds good. So I'm Marty Markinson. I am a freelance product manager and also bootstrapping my own company. So landed in this kind of role through studying engineering at school. Did some work as a quality assurance analyst and realized that I much more enjoy building products than testing products, as good as I am at breaking things. And that's where I got my first product management role, where I was working on an augmented reality software for the industrial enterprise. So think like step-by-step instructions with AR overlaid on top of machinery or the manufacturing line. And while I was there, I got introduced to the whole concept of product management. Really didn't know what it was before then, but really fell in love with the idea of thinking about what problems customers are having, prototyping solutions, getting closer to the answer, and continuing from there. Have always kind of tinkered with and worked on my own businesses and have a bootstrap company in the real estate marketing space. And today I split my days between building that business, bootstrapping that business, which helps people make social media content, specifically in the real estate niche, as well as doing freelance product management. So it's a little bit of a unique career path. I think a lot of people think, you're PM, you have to be at a company full time, but I think I've
Yeah.
found a way to like both build my own thing as well as find product management contract opportunities and then be able to kind of work on those two things in tandem.
So would you say like it's fractional PM that you are actually spacing out into a new whole role, right?
Yeah, I think the way I have been doing it is more of a longer term contract. So when I get into a contract, I focus on that. I've automated a lot of my business so that it's able to coast on its side. Obviously, the more time you spend on it, the faster it grows. But I've invested a lot in automation so that it can just coast and make money on itself. And then when there's product management roles, whether there's been maybe an open position that people are waiting to find like the perfect hire for, or maybe some change in the organization, they're trying to figure something out. That's where I step in and kind of fill the gap so that the engineering team can be running on full cylinders and continue to output stuff that's serving customer needs while the company is trying to like get their bearings straight. So it's been more of like, I'm in the product management contract role. I'm there 9 to 5, like a typical PM. And then on the sides, things are, my business is being automated. And then when contracts kind of get lower steam or end out, then I guess spend more time on the business and grow it from there.
Nice, nice. And so this is actually pretty good, right? So we met through X, and
Yeah.
it was through product management. You were talking about, I don't know how did I come across, but it was around your some post around product management or something. You had a really hot take on something. I'm gonna follow this guy. He's cool.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and
Good
you know
choice.
what's funny, Marty, and I think I underestimated the value of X.
Yeah.
And I've met like great people. Like you're one of them. Met a lawyer, met some other folks. I got in touch with Semel Shah over text and email. It was all X. LinkedIn is never like that, right?
Mhm.
It's very natural, like it's very organic, must we say.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
speaking of organic, right?
Mhm.
Like that's natural. And since our topic is product management, I want to touch upon the product management interviews, how they're
Yep.
conducted, how out of touch they are. Okay, I hope I'm not killing my jobs getting into the FANG companies, but it's just reality, right? Like how they're interviewed. Like, what is your take on it? Because my question is, how out of touch are those jobs? Like when you look at product sense, analytics, right? Don't you feel they're subjective?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's something that's hard to figure out in a 60-minute phone call if someone actually can just say that they can make a product or they can actually bring it to life and make it happen. I think like one of the questions that drives me like absolutely nuts is when people are like, pretend you're the PM of this new product, like a doctor, online doctor service. Like, how would you walk through creating that product? The reason that drives me nuts is like, one, it's not very often that a product manager is coming up from a product from scratch. And two, what you're doing is you are pretty much asking them to completely BS a product on the spot and convince you that it's a good idea, which like I would never want a PM who can just make up ideas on the spot and then tell you it's a good idea and convince you it's a good idea. I think that's actually something that would be potentially harmful for your organization. What you want is someone who is curious, who is willing to know that they don't know everything, willing to look into the information to figure out how they're going to learn that, willing to talk to customers to see if their validations are true, willing to make very small prototypes or test things out to see if their hypotheses are correct. And then through that act of discovery make something, not someone who's able to just make something on the spot and then convince you that it's like the next genius product idea. Because every time I've heard someone come up with an idea that they think is genius and is able to convince the whole world that's in the organization it's genius without having any touch with data or reality or customers, it doesn't work out well. So those types of questions drive me nuts. I think you really have to be like, tell me about a time and be very specific about that. And then even more, which I think is an interesting new take. I haven't seen many companies hire PMs this way, but like have them on for a contract and have them do a project and learn actually if they're able to do what they're saying they can do, or they're just really good at convincing you that they can say what they can do.
That's actually true. Like I think with the like I'm sure you have given like many of those. I've been in those interviews, Marty, and they're like the last interview I had, they were like, tell me like how would you go about building a environmental app for Facebook? I had to BS my way, but with the framework, right? Mission,
Right.
vision, how to put this, it's really soft. You're really getting, if you answer that, there are two things. You either understand the framework well,
Yeah.
but when it comes to reality of execution, there probably is disconnect. And I've seen many PMs out there, they are really good in cracking interviews. That's one thing.
Right.
But when it comes to action, they're probably there for a 1 year, 2 year, and then they're like, basically they're pushed out. And then
Yeah.
X Meta, X Google. It's like doesn't mean anything. You don't impact. And to your point, that kind of challenge that when you have, right? Like you hire someone, it's not only that, you don't pay them, it's RSUs, the work behind it, and the whole onboarding, offboarding. Why don't you think companies are not doing contract to hire? I actually find that much more welcoming, much faster. Have a framework, see if this person is, going ahead the right way. And if not, bye-bye, next.
Yeah, I think probably the two reasons are one, maybe the HR systems aren't set up to do that. Maybe they
Hmm.
don't have a way to onboard contractors and then bring them on to full time. They don't know how to pay them as a contractor versus full time. So that could be one reason, and it's a world we live in is that the systems aren't built to to support maybe the best answers, but it is a question that you should ask is, are we beholden to our systems when they're not finding us the best candidate, or are we wasting a lot of money hiring people who aren't the right fit? And should we make a change? I think there's another good point against it, which could be, and it is a good one, is especially in the United States, the fact of healthcare. So if you're a
Yeah.
contractor, you're on the hook for your own healthcare most of the times. And if a company is saying, hey, we can hire you, there's two offers. One is contractor to hire, and one is, you get full time, but you get benefits. You might lean towards the benefits. So I think the ways I think about it, it's not always because it's, the best outcome for both the person who is looking for the job as well as the company, but it's more of just a problem of the either government systems or the company systems, which is, it's a shame when those
Yeah.
incentives and those things don't line up. It's a reality of the world we live in, but I think, it's not something I hear talked about that often. So I think it's maybe bringing more awareness in a conversation like this will have some people think, hey, are we just doing this because our systems tell us to do this, or is
Yeah.
this really bringing us our best candidate? And you as someone who's looking for a job in a product role, like, is this, on the flip side of it, you're interviewing for a job, you can ask them as much as you want about culture, and I'm sure
Yeah.
they've heard enough talks about it that they can read it from the back if someone wakes them up in the middle of the night. But that doesn't mean that that's actually the case. There's a
Yeah.
big difference between, saying what your values are, your product led organization, you give product managers autonomy, versus like the reality could be, it's really just more of a project management role where you're just, listing out and executing on someone else's product demands.
Yeah, you actually bring up a good point. Like, what if the systems are not there? But you would be surprised, like the companies like, the big tech companies, and if they are not able to support it, I don't know how much of that could be true because wouldn't be in their benefit. Like I had some hire last year, great person, didn't work out, that person choose to leave, whatever reasons. I almost felt like people who are contract to hire were much easier because then I can quickly try. Like
Yep.
it's like, hey, okay, great. I like what you have, portfolio. Let's put you in action.
Yep.
You can literally tell if someone is going to be really good within the first 60 days maximum.
Yep.
If it takes you a year because of the process and everything, it's disappointing. I think they should look into it because wouldn't that like it would save them money. I just think of that one value is one quick talent pool.
100%. 100%. It's a lot like I was just thinking, the way products are going on the internet, right? You want to try a product before you buy it. You want
Yeah,
to have touch the software. You want to click the keys. You want to, the landing page and the copy will get you interested. But
yeah,
then we live in a world where you actually want to see is the messaging and the marketing. Does it live up to the product? I think it's kind of the same thing with employment. It's like, can you say the right words? Can you present a way of thinking as like a first gate, but then there should be a second gate of like, let's put the hands to the keyboard and let's
yeah.
actually put this to the test. Because there are different realities where people can be great at the interview process, but not great at the work. I'm sure there's cases where people are not so great at the interview process and
Oh
great at
yeah.
the work. And I think that being able to let people actually, freemium, I won't say freemium, but like a trial,
Yeah.
a trial job is an important way to de-risk it for both parties and actually see if they live up to the hype.
Speaking of the interviews, like I've seen many companies, they have some really they say they respect the time for the candidate, and I've been in like 10, 12 rounds of interviews.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's worse than a date. At least in 3 dates, you want to make this person your, uh, whatever partner or whatever, a person to be
Yeah.
with. But you're spending 40 minutes doing the interview conversation, so it's like 10 times.
Mm.
I think contract to hire possibly allows you to have a cultural fit, work ethics, talk about your work, 3 hours maximum, you're good. Like, don't you like what is your take on these interview processes, especially now with these layoffs as well? Things will become more rigorous, you know.
Yeah. I think that the time invested in like having the interview, to be honest, I don't know. It doesn't bother me too much. I mean, it's tough when you're in a place where you like, I don't know, keep having to reshuffle schedules, but it's
Yeah,
just, to me, it's more of it feels like hard to get past the surface level of the conversation. It feels like very much
yeah.
like, you know, perpetual first dates where
Yep,
you're
yep.
like, all right, at a certain point, like we both know that there's some chemistry here or some interest between the two parties, but like there should be a next level, which isn't marriage. It could be like a next level of, okay, let's meet each other's friend group
Yeah,
for
yeah,
lack
yeah.
of a term. But I feel like there's like definitely a disconnect between like, okay, there's like, it's such a big step from first interview to full employment. And there's like, it's really, you're all in or not, that I think there's like a middle ground of like, okay, we have enough agreement that we both have some chemistry. Let's see what this next middle ground step could be.
So what do you think, like now when you look at it, right? So changing a subject a little bit. So we talked about the challenges with product interviews, right? So you want to find the right people, but there's also a challenge. When I was hiring manager at my last role, you need to find the best people,
Yeah.
right? You want to find people who are hungry. And when I say hungry, they really want to just put their finger on that product and be like, I built it.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding those? How would you
Yeah.
do that?
It's a good question because I feel like in some ways, like product management has become like a buzz career or like a little bit of a hype career where people, probably just look at the salaries, probably realize that maybe they don't have an engineering background and see as a way to get into the door. of a high paying salary with some pretty good benefits, which is totally fair. Like, I think
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. That makes complete sense. But I think it also means, the from the person who's looking for qualified applicants, now you have so much supply, it becomes a question of how do you filter the right quality candidates. And I think it comes back to, like, you need someone with experience who has built products end to end, has thought about the whole end-to-end experience for customers, and it hasn't just been, a small domain expert in a small silo that's like disconnected from everything
Yeah.
and able to just say, here's a bunch of frameworks that we've added together in different slides that look really nice to tell you a roadmap that could or could not be made at some time. You need someone who actually has the experience to say, part of this is getting buy-in from the company and the leadership and the stakeholders, which is a part of it. There's no doubt that is a part of product management, but also a very important part is knowing what to build through having failed a couple of times, I would say, and having actually gone through the process of taking an idea and a vision and bringing it into reality. I think that's a huge step. It's like, vision is one thing, but if you're coming up with your vision divorced from having experience putting it to reality, there's just some things that you can make great vision slides, but don't make great products, or just aren't able to be accomplished by the team, the resources, the other constraints you have. So it's really, I think you need someone who, the vision stuff, I feel like, is more of the things that are easy to it's more of a sales kind of, easy to convince, easy to present, but maybe the harder part is like, can you take that and bring it into reality?
That's true. And like, I think one thing I want to add to is like, over the past few years, becoming a product manager has not only become hype, and the fact that people realize it doesn't need engineering hardcore background. I feel like it has also been, I don't know the right word to say, but how to put, they're diamonds in the rough now. So they're
Yeah.
like a lot of good, great talent, people who are former entrepreneurs, former founders, shit didn't work out, but they probably are valuable to a big company. Then you see people who really are doing stuff, they have good experience, but then you see a lot of this pool. How would you go about like even searching? Like I just for my sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm hunting as well, and I see like 4,000 people, right, applying for one job.
Yeah.
As a hiring manager, if I were the hiring manager, you already have ATs and stuff, right? But if a hiring manager wants to be like, I really want someone who is my right hand, get stuff done, understand, like you said, from the beginning till the end, the whole PDLC, real product person, not
Yeah.
not the mentor, coachy, or buzzy one, the real heads and getting their dirty. How would you go about finding them?
Yeah, I think the best way that I've found is, there's the career resume, but there's also looking at the projects outside of work. I think if you see someone who is taking on either building their own product, making their own podcast, writing their own newsletter, creating their own content, like those are people who are actually, creating their own vision, and then not only just coming up with a vision, but trying to make it real and hitting the friction and the reality of the world that happens when you try to bring your vision to life. I think those are the best candidates I've seen who have either worked on different hackathon projects that have continued on past the hackathon, like not just the weekend, but they've stuck with it and they've gotten some customers, they've gotten some users, they've gotten some subscribers, and they understand the difference between, hey, I had this great idea, to, hey, I had this great idea and now I've been working on it and I've learned what my idea actually was and what the reality of what the market was. I think those are super valuable. And then that gives someone who does something like that also is totally understands the end-to-end customer experience. They understand that a product is just a portion of the value that you promise a customer, the solution to their problem, but there's also, how do they find out about that product? How do they continue to remember that the product exists? How do they get answered to the questions at, like, after afternoon and they say, hey, this doesn't work? How do they get the answers to those questions? People who've like lived that reality of what it takes more than just shipping some code and
Yeah.
having some release notes and actually know what it means to get that into people's hands and to get them to keep using it on their own, really understand and have like an understanding of the end to end what's needed to make something successful, in my opinion. But what do you think?
I actually agree. I think I would be biased, right? So I started my first company when I was 19. So I'm already in the biased spectrum
Yeah.
of things. But I can share that the people who have hired or worked in the past, there's some good and bad product managers, right? There's also a book about that. I think one of the things what I've noticed, the good product managers, they, I don't know what's the right saying, they talk the walk or walk the talk, right?
Mhm.
And that is something I actually look for. So, like you said, I'll just echo that, right? People who are doing their own side projects, their own personal freelancing, their own personal fractional stuff, their own podcast, their own building their side projects. I actually built one with ChatGPT to just determine the prediction of stocks.
Mhm.
Look at the past 5 years, when did they really dip, and when should I buy? It recommended me to buy Apple, and it's only been like 2 weeks, so I haven't seen much of a good return. But it's good because you
Yeah.
learn, you build things. You don't have to be an expert. So I do agree, like that realism, or how to say, the reality, people who are really in touch with reality, who're doing that, I think are the right people to go ahead and hire or even work with. Like that's one of the reasons I spoke to you. I'm like, oh, what you doing? You're like, I'm at Sam Bush. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is already great. You know why? He knows how to get stuff done. Right? Like, because how many people have you met in your life? I guess, Marty, that's a very deviating, different question, but how many people have you met in your life
Oh
who
boy.
really get stuff done versus they don't? And you don't have to say 10, 5. You can just give a ratio, because that's, you know, is a big
Uh,
one.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about some conversations I've had where people they come up to, they're like, oh, Marty, I have like this genius idea for this product. It's going to be like AI for accounting software I don't know, in Texas or
Yeah,
in the US. And I'm like, all right, that's a could be a great idea. I don't really know. I usually tell people they have great ideas because I don't think ideas matter that much. And as long as it keeps them invested in it, that's fine. I think what is next is like, how are you going to find your customers? And they're like, oh, wait,
yeah.
wait, wait, wait. Like, first, I need to like raise a bunch of money and I need to
Oh,
build out a pitch deck. I'm like, stop. No, you're going down the wrong path. Can
yeah,
you find one person in this accounting niche? Can you get them on a phone call? Can you ask them what their problems are? Because I think that like the idea to me is just is fuel and energy and excitement. So I don't like I think the ideas are great because they get you pumped about something. But what I think you need to channel that to is not raise, I have to raise a bunch of money or I have to find a technical co-founder. I think you need to channel that to reality, which is, can I get someone on the phone that has this problem? And can I validate that they actually have this problem? Or very, yeah, because that's kind of biased to say, can I validate that they have this problem? Can I get someone on a phone call who's in this market, and can I just listen to what problems they have? And I guarantee if you're like, I cannot do that, you are never going to have a successful product. I'm sorry to say it, but
yeah,
like if you can't find someone in your niche and get them to talk to you about what their life is like, then you're going to have a really hard time after you potentially raise a lot of money and you're trying to figure out what you need to build. So that's what when people are like, especially around ideas, just because I do get a little bit worked up about it, is that like ideas are great, but it should be channeled into the very next small step, which I think a lot of people go from idea to like, now I need to be at like level 1,000. It's like, no, you actually need to be on like level 0.5 ahead of this, which is talking to one person who's in that market. And so if anyone's listening to that and has an idea and you're passionate about it, I think that's great. And just talk to someone who's in that market and make that your next goal. And I'm sorry, but you won't get rich immediately, but
yeah,
that is the best way to get rich in the long term.
yeah, yeah. And I think like what you're just saying is like, I posted this today. I woke up and I'm like, all these startups. This, I heard some guy raise so much money. I think, who was it? I think Brett today raised, I think, and it was someone else, oh, his background. I'm like, that's great. And then I was like, you know what? It's one thing. that is not how to put, I'm forgetting words today. Is not to put like in the glitz and glamour. They always say $1 billion raise, 500. I never thought founders' business is raising money. It's not raising money, it's building products that's really helping your customers to solve whatever problem they have. So I think slow growth is
Yeah,
better than growth at all cost.
yeah,
Because I've seen companies, well, right now what you're seeing, all these layoff is growth at all cost.
yeah,
Not like, hey, you know what? We have $1 billion in the bank. We were doing 30% year over year. Okay, we're doing 20. Guys, let's stay steady. Let's focus. Let's grab other. No. Oh, we're not doing 50. Growth at all costs. And then they do that. And eventually you see companies like really falling apart. Like if you see like, which is sad, I actually like Google and the Gemini project is pretty good, but you saw what happened, right? They posted this video, it's not true. It
yeah,
made some error before that, and I'm like, God, it's you guys are doing growth at all costs, and it's not helping. And I think that is something a lot of founders, even hiring managers and product managers, should look into is slow growth is okay, but people who have really done their job are the right hire. Else don't hire.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you want to get some guy who has fancy MBA. That's actually good because maybe they're actually good. There's a high chance, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I have a different opinion on that. Like, yeah, I work with those. So
Yeah. I think it's just, everyone's in a rush to get to like step 10. And honestly, step one is not that exciting, or it's not that great. If you call up your friends and like, yeah, I just talked to someone today who works in accounting in like Kansas. I don't think anyone will be that excited or understand what it is. But the truth is that's how great products are made, are
yeah,
connecting with people who have that problem, learning about them, being a sponge, building one little thing that helps make their life easier, and then just repeating that over and over and over again. And I think it'll get you to, the place where you can have a flashy, you know, marketing video that you raise so much money. But it's like the little small steps in between, I think, just don't get press and just don't get noticed. But I think those are really the things that like great companies do and great product managers do to have like a solid foundation under that number.
yeah,
Because I think there are companies that are like really great, and like I'm thinking about Figma, that great
yeah.
product. I think the CEO of Figma, Dylan, cares a lot about his customers, and you see him on Twitter. And I think you can tell a lot from like the CEOs who are like writing their own posts, engaging with their own followers, that those are the types of people who are invested in the people who have the problem and they want to solve that problem, and they have a really solid foundation of business. And then all the fundraising numbers and the big splash and the acquisition numbers is built on like a solid foundation of customers that love their product and a culture that knows how to build something that people want.
Yeah, and one of the things I've no. By the way, do you hear any noise behind me or no? A little bit.
Nope.
Okay. So I think I want to ask you one question. I want to pivot a little bit and talk about have we like started over engineering product management roles?
A good question. I think that, yeah, I do think it's really as simple as you need to be able to be fearless about talking to customers, and by that I mean make it a priority, and everyone's got plenty of other meetings and recurring stuff, and being able to say, no, I need to talk to customers, listening to what they say, bringing that thing into the product, and working with the constraints with the organization. I think that, there's lots of different frameworks that I've read, there's lots of different slides and ways to prioritize things, but I do think it's literally as simple as, making sure you're constantly in touch with the customers, understanding what the business needs, and then connecting those two dots.
It's not. It can. It's a very simple answer, Marty, because I feel like here's my opinion. Okay, so if I throw a rock, um, I just want to be careful who I name. So I don't want to name anybody, but there are some people out there, they're doing good job. There's nothing negative, right? And then I look, and then it reminds me of an industry or a profession, Wall Street. You look at Wall Street, they're like, hey, it's buyer's leverage or seller's finance. And they use all these terms. And an average Joe They'll be
Yeah.
like, what the fuck does seller's finance mean? Or what
Yeah.
the this XYZ word means. So, and apparently I feel that all these product management gurus, or they're really good ones, but whereas this is all organically happening, and this is where I want to ask, is the same question. It's over engineering. An example for that is I've seen a lot of people, they're like, oh, you need to use X framework. You need to use this, We2Mom framework, which is pretty good one. But just saying, there are many of those. And those who are not in the industry, right, who are
Yeah.
not working specifically in product management, or they're from the outside, they're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And we're trying to make product management, which is not a fancy, nor a very hard, not a very easy. It's just a role of a person who's not a project manager, but he manages the product life cycle, means the beginning and the end and its growth. But they keep over engineering by putting new abbreviations, by adding more acronyms, by adding more fancy words. That's why I was questioning. Don't you feel that product management is now becoming a little bit of an over engineering? It's not scientist job. We're not doing rocket to the moon yet. Well, Elon
Mhm.
Musk is doing that. What what do you think about that when I put it from that perspective?
Yeah, I think that the more I read about frameworks, and everyone can pick their one that they want, but like the core is that you just need to understand what your customers want, and you need to be able to deliver it.
And don't,
Like it's how I would really simple it down. And if you find yourself making a lot of jargon that isn't connected to those things, finding what your customers want and figuring out how to get it to them, then I think you have lost touch with what the purpose of product management is. I mean, there are constraints, and there are constraints within the company, resource wise, and
yeah,
stakeholders, and commitments. Those are all absolutely true. But I think,
yeah.
yeah, that's the truth. Is like, if you need one mantra, it's like figure out what your customers want, figure out how to make it happen.
This reminded me of Humane. Have you seen that Humane CNBC interview?
I haven't seen the interview. I've seen, yeah, some of
A
their
clip of it, right?
stuff.
Right. And that guy, like the guy's name is Imran, by the way. So I have no relation to
No, no
him.
relation.
And so he was asked by I forgot the name. He's a famous anchor. And so he was asked by the CNBC, like, so what is this product? What does it do? And he started off with, this is the world's first AI with tap on the tap and then gesture. I'm like, you lost me, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not your customer. Now you're already selling it like, I don't know. Did you see that? Have you seen those clips? Probably.
I mean, I've seen the footage. You can just tell from their videos when you're
Yeah.
like, I've watched this so many times, and I'm still not really sure like why I want to hold my hand on a certain place to get my information. I mean, I love technology, to be
Yeah.
perfectly frank. I'm a nerd, and I love technology, and I love playing with things, but you have to remove that in
Yeah.
terms of, are people actually going to use this? They're two different questions. If you want to build cool technologies, that's fine. It's like a hobby, right? I don't know, have fun building cool stuff, but it's different than, do you want to actually make something that is a product that people are going to use? That's a whole
Yeah.
different category of thinking.
One more thing is like when you're building these products, for example, I think ChatGPT would be a good example, like the know your
Mhm.
customers part. They were like, hey, just put it out. It's a chat. We'll see how people, and they really connected with their customers. They
Yeah,
unlocked the use cases. They were like, hey, you know what? Take it for free. Eh, I sometimes I wonder, why are people over engineering a product management job? If our job, like I have, whenever I join any company, Marty, I don't know if that's the same for you. I'm 100% sure it is, because the kind of person you are, from what I'm getting, I have talked to 10, 20 customers. Like, I don't put a cap, but I need to get at least a good base. And so I
yeah,
realized if I talk to 10, I'm getting somewhere. If I talk to 15, I have my hypothesis coming up. I've seen many of the PMs, they don't do that. And some of them are doing that, which is good. Some of them are not.
Yeah.
I wonder why. And then they're like, hey, I have this framework. It's like, good luck.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies, not this isn't to say every company is like there's just
Yeah.
too many layers, I think, in front of product management in some ways. It's easy to hide behind support and sales and customer success as the people who are taking, the direct feedback from customers. And it's easy to go along with whatever is like the popular perspective, you know, in-house or whatever, wherever the momentum's going, and just continue to go with that. And I think you can honestly, I think you could have a fine career just going with what
Yeah.
you think is the safest option. And I think you can be divorced from having to answer to, the customers who are the people who are going to be using the product through layers. So I think that's the reason is there's just it's easy, it's an easy path to take in
Yeah.
some ways.
Yeah.
So I think that the less friction that you can, the more directly you can be involved with the customers, the more you can have those relationships. And it takes work, to be perfectly honest. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of the companies that I've worked for, it's like no one goes to you every day unless you have a really good manager. And it's like, how many customers did you talk today?
Yep.
How many customers did you talk to this week? It takes a really good manager, I think, to be on the ball about those types of questions, because I think the easier answer is, did you ship this thing that we said we were going to ship? Yes
Yep.
or no? Is the safer thing to question, and the more likely question that you'll get as a product manager. So I think it really comes up to you taking it upon yourself to be like, this is how we help make this thing successful and make this thing something that is serving the needs of the people who use it, is to make it a priority. Because I don't know, there's plenty of ways to cop out of that, I would say.
And to add to that, I think I just want to put that out there. We both understand there are constraints within
Yeah,
the companies.
totally.
There's a political landscape, whether people like to hear this or not. There is challenges. There are stakeholders who have to have their own buy-in, and everybody has their personal growth alignment. So there are like a lot of variables. But I think if you go about and just focus on being true to your nature and true to your work in terms of customer first, at least if something happens tomorrow, you're like, I was doing the right thing, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, totally. Yeah,
But
I agree.
so one last topic which you have here, which I want to talk about, which is a very interesting one, the rise of freelance slash agency product management.
Yeah, I think this is one thing that I'm just learning more about, and the product managers that I talk to are learning more about. But I think there's two different camps. There's one which is like hiring a product manager as a contractor to help fill a role that maybe can't get filled as quickly, or maybe is something that, like, hey, it would be great. Our current product manager is over there, eyes in water, is in so many meetings they can't talk to customers. We need to hire someone else to take on a portion of this product, which I think people have it in their mindset that this is something that you can do for software. Like, I think it's pretty familiar for companies to contract out for their software work because we have bigger projects that we want to take on. We don't have the teams in house. We need to spin something up quickly. But I don't think people realize that sometimes the product manager is actually a bottleneck for taking on new initiatives.
Yeah.
And if you want to clear some of those bottlenecks quickly, or have a product or a new idea that you want to go after, but your product manager is constrained, there are agencies that can bring in a product manager to help alleviate that and bring that in. As well as, on the other side, if you're looking to contract with a software agency, I would highly consider thinking about, do they have a product manager that will help lead the team? Or is this going to be on our current product manager's responsibility to also lead this other agency or software outsourcing team? Because product managers can also become a bottleneck if they
Yeah.
don't have enough time. And oftentimes, I would say, back to our early conversation, what gets sacrificed in that bottleneck of
Yeah.
engineers who have a thirst to ship new features is the product manager going out and talking to customers, understanding what they need.
But when you think of like companies which are outsourcing, like you mentioned that, right? They have project managers, so they
Yep.
can, but and that's my question, right? So people always confuse that.
Yep.
And people sell that. Their agencies have had, they're like, oh, we have this specifically, yeah, he consider him or her as your product manager. I'm like, but this person is a project manager. It's a
Yeah.
big difference. How would you how would you vet that for someone like, let's say you're a startup, how would you do that?
Sorry, what was the question? How would you?
How would you go about vetting and making sure that, hey, are these product managers or these project managers for the software engineering? Because mostly they're always project managers, from what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the easiest question that one you could ask, and I mean, you should have a perspective
Yeah.
of what you want as well as how are you going to decide what gets built? If they
Yeah.
say you're going to tell us the specs and we are going to build those specs um, exactly as you told us to, then you're probably having a project manager. If you're in a scenario where you say like, we understand the use case, we understand this is a strategic need. We understand this is an opportunity you want to test out, but we don't have all the information on the exact solution or the problems that we need to solve. That's where you're probably going to want to either, like I said, use your product manager in-house to decide that, or work with the company, see if they have that in-house, see if they have that expertise. It's pretty easy to tell if they're like, that's up to you. That's not our job. You needed to give us an RFP and a spec, and then we'll build it. That's where the difference between a project manager will be really good at taking your spec and bringing it to light. Doesn't matter if it's the right idea or the wrong idea.
Yeah.
A product manager will be a little bit better at understanding what the problems are, what it takes to build that, what the first iteration could be to test if that's the right thing to build, and then grow from there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. And I think the product managers, if you go ahead and have someone from the outside as a contractor, many companies need to realize they need to bring them up to speed.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times they're like, hey, so you're product manager, now you just do it. No, sometimes you have to be like, this is the data, these are the customers, feel free, we're there to help. So I think it has
Yeah,
to be both ways of empowering. Um,
100%.
but yeah, this is actually, are you seeing this as a like as of a trend right now? I'm seeing more of a design trend, and I actually
Mhm.
starting one as well. But it's like, is this becoming a trend where you're productizing product management?
I think
Specifically,
it's I think it's becoming a trend in the way I've seen it is like different what people would think of software agencies are starting to hire product managers to help um, be within a scrum team, be within a group of engineers so that they can bring a little bit more strategic thinking to the process so they can think a little bit longer term. So it's not like, hey, we're going to ship what you tell us and then that is our job, but like let's actually add a little bit more value to make sure that what we're shipping is providing you the most amount of value as a customer. So I think what I see is like the most immediate shift is maybe not so much like the productized product manager. Maybe that will happen sometime, but more software agencies bringing product management expertise in-house so that when they're working with companies who want to hire them, they can think like more strategically, long-term, think about how it fits into the different business use cases instead of just being, we're going to ship what you want and that's it.
yeah, this makes sense. This and probably that is happening a little bit. Like I have only seen one agency that I'm aware of. Of
Yeah.
course, only working with one of them. They're based in I think Warsaw, Poland. But that coming towards the end of the show, I always ask a few questions, Marty.
All
So
right.
one of them is these layoffs are happening, and the reason I'm asking is because I'm seeing some tweets, reading about it. Around I think 20,000 plus people have been laid off.
Mm.
What do you think from your perspective, someone who's out there, seeing this happening, just a different perspective? Um, what's happening? What will end up like? What's the future in the next 2, 3 months?
Uh, Hard to know. I think that, the best thing that advice I would give is if you're someone who's in that situation, sucks. Keep moving, find your own products, process, podcasts, content that you want to make, and experiment with it. I think that will help keep you fresh, will help you maybe learn some different skills that you haven't had, maybe find a passion that you know, you didn't have time for or didn't know you had exist. But like, you know, there's obviously the interview process, but I don't think you could interview all day. I think what would help complement some of those interviews is taking on a side project or a side business or a podcast and trying to make it happen. I think it could be an opportunity which maybe you didn't have because you were spending most of your time full time, and it's an experience to get you more experience in a role or in a type of process that you hadn't experience with. And then when you're like going through the interview process, now you have something that wasn't just a huge gap, that was just like, I guess, you know, sat on the couch and ate a bunch of potato chips. And then I guess to your question of like, what does that mean for the future? Maybe we'll see more people who are able to start their own businesses, create their own podcast, because like they took that as an opportunity and of here's a chance for me to take a swing at something that I wasn't able to do before. So maybe we'll see, you know, more creators, more bootstrap businesses, more indie hackers that maybe didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah. And one more question, said two. The other one is any like kind of advice or anything that you can share with, like, you know, product managers who are aspiring product managers and product managers who are listening, and if someone who is a coach or a guru or somebody who ends up one day listening to this, anything that you can share, like your opinion overall.
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to, and this is what's given me the most success. And it was kind of the answer to your own question, but like putting skills and frameworks to the test by actually making something. I think you'll learn very quickly the difference between something that is a good framework and something that is actually helping you solve a customer need, find the right market. So taking those ideas and applying them to reality, building something that you're interested in, will teach you a lot. So especially if you're an aspiring product manager, you know, it's easy to go to like, you know, a website to teach you how to code or a boot camp and say, you know, these people will give me the skills that I need, or this course will teach me the skills. It's a little less fuzzy in product management, but I think it comes down to take an idea that you think is interesting and find a way to get your first 5 customers. I think that would be huge. And to anyone who, you know, if I was interviewing aspiring product manager, and they said, hey, this is the tool I built using ChatGPT and no code tools and Zapier. And here, more importantly, to be honest, here are the 100 customers in the space that I talked to, and here's what they told me. And if they told me that my prototype was terrible, I would be ecstatic to hear that someone they actually went to and they realized that something that they built is from their imagination didn't actually fit a customer need. I feel like that's a huge step in like opening the lights to, oh, you know, it's not always this genius idea, but it's actually sitting back and listening to what someone wants and building it from there.
That's true. Know your customers and build something. That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
exactly.
That's the end of the journey. But no. Thanks, Marty, for joining. I'm very happy to have this call, and I want to have
Yeah.
more of it. I think one thing I want to do is have a roasting version of product management. I
Oh
think that
boy.
would be a really interesting where we can roast our profession.
Oh man.
That's
That'd be interesting.
I don't want to go off and like cry in the corner, so I'd rather roast myself. But I think that would be an interesting one. We can do that sometime. But thank you for joining,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully have you again.
Absolutely.